Imagine watching your team on the biggest stage in football, the Champions League final, only to see them collapse before your very eyes. 1 goal in the opening minute, 2 more before halftime, and suddenly the dream had turned into a nightmare. Fans were silent, players were broken, and even Liverpool's captain Steven Gerrard looked destined to go down in history as the man who led his team to the most humiliating defeat in a final. But what happened after that break in Istanbul was something nobody could have scripted. It wasn't just a fight back. It wasn't just about goals. It was a moment where belief defied logic, where destiny seemed to shift, and where a team that was dead and buried came back to life. This is the story of the night Liverpool refused to die.
Oh, saved by Dina, champion!
The Champions League final in Istanbul was supposed to be the biggest night in Liverpool's modern history, but within seconds, it became a nightmare. Just 50 seconds into the match, Milan's captain, Paolo Maldini, pounced on a loose ball and rifled it past Jerzy Dudek, a goal from one of the most decorated defenders of all time, and a brutal reminder that Liverpool were facing not just any opponent, but a team stacked with legends. As the red half of the Ataturk Stadium fell silent, the white shirts of Milan grew in confidence. From that moment on, it was a masterclass in control. Andrea Pirlo dictated the tempo with elegance. Kaká tore through Liverpool's midfield with effortless runs, and Clarence Seedorf covered every blade of grass with authority. Liverpool's defense, already fragile, looked overwhelmed, and then came the dagger, Hernan Crespo. First, a clinical finish that doubled Milan's lead. Then, minutes before the break, he delivered a goal so audacious it felt like mockery. Whistle blew for halftime, the scoreboard read 3-0. For Liverpool, it wasn't just a mountain to climb, it was Everest without oxygen. Their players trudged toward the tunnel with their heads down, beaten in body language if not yet in scoreline. Steven Gerrard, usually a symbol of belief, looked hollow. Jamie Carragher shouted in frustration, while Jimmy Traoré covered his face as if trying to hide from the humiliation. In the stands, thousands of Liverpool supporters were frozen in disbelief. Some stood motionless, scarves still in the air as if refusing to accept what they had witnessed. Others wept openly, and many, heartbroken, began drifting toward the exits, convinced they had come all this way only to watch a massacre. Around the world, commentators and pundits were merciless. The game is done. This is over. Newspapers were already drafting headlines about Milan's coronation and Liverpool's humiliation. At that moment, everything pointed to disaster. This was the kind of defeat that scars a generation of fans, the kind of collapse that defines careers. Yet deep inside that dressing room, something unexpected was about to happen. Something that would turn despair into destiny and humiliation into history. Rafa Benitez refused to let it end that way. Calm but firm, he reorganized the team and made a crucial decision. Dietmar Hamann would come on to stabilize the midfield and give Gerrard freedom to push forward. It wasn't a speech of fire and fury, it was strategy, belief, and the reminder that even giants can fall if you keep fighting.
You're 3-0 down at half-time, you're an experienced manager, you've won the big trophies. Are you also sitting there going, this could be 4, 5, 6?
Yeah, you are worried about that.
Obviously, the next goal, you're
No,
back
you are
in.
worried about that.
You don't want to be embarrassed to lose a final 6-0 or 5-0.
Happened to me when I was in Extremadura, and then we were losing a game that was 3-0, and then we scored the goal and said, what can we do now? The other team is much better than us. If we go high, we leave a space, it will be 5-6, and then at this time, what I said, for me was clear. We have to score 1 goal. I remember all of them with their head down. I said, listen, put the head up, so we have nothing to lose. We have been working so hard to be here. Nothing to lose. Come on, if we score 1 goal, we go back. And it's in my notes. We go back into the game. We were lucky enough to score 3 goals in 6 minutes, but they changed of tactics, changed the dynamic of the game.
But if an experienced manager, could you still be sitting there going, this could be 5 or 6?
Yeah. No, you are worried about that. But you have to convince them.
That's right.
So I am quite calm, quite analytic, but I am trying always to win. I am trying to find a solution. Yeah. So I was thinking, I need to pass them the belief that we can do.
But did you have the belief, truthfully, where you're 3-0 to a brilliant team? No. You're just faking it a little bit.
But it's not that I was thinking, oh, no. I have to do my job now. That's it. What happened, we will see.
As the second half began, Liverpool's fans, those who had stayed, rose to their feet, singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" louder than ever. It wasn't optimism, it was defiance. And in the 54th minute, the spark arrived. Gerrard leapt above the Milan defense and powered a header into the net. He didn't just score, he screamed to the crowd, raising his arms, demanding belief. Suddenly, the stadium shifted. 2 minutes later, Vladimir Šmícer struck from distance and the ball slipped past Dida. 3-2. From humiliation to hope in a heartbeat. Milan, once untouchable, looked rattled. And then came the moment that changed everything. Gerrard was brought down in the box, and Xabi Alonso stepped up for the penalty. His shot was saved, but destiny refused to be denied. Alonso slammed in the rebound, and the scoreboard read the unthinkable, 3-3. In just 6 minutes, Liverpool had risen from the dead. The impossible was suddenly alive, and Milan's dominance had crumbled into panic. What followed was no longer just a football match, it was a battle of willpower, where every tackle, every clearance, every second carried the weight of history. If Liverpool's comeback belonged to Gerrard, Schmitzer, and Alonso, the survival in extra time belonged to one man, Jerzy Dudek. For most of the season, the Polish goalkeeper had been inconsistent, even doubted by his own fans. But on this night, he became immortal. In the dying moments of extra time, Andriy Shevchenko, Milan's lethal striker, had 2 golden chances to break Liverpool hearts. First, a powerful header that Dudek somehow clawed away. The rebound fell straight back to Shevchenko, who blasted from point-blank range. Somehow, impossibly, Dudek blocked it again. Milan's players couldn't believe it. Shevchenko, their star, stood frozen in shock. And then came the penalty shootout. As the teams lined up, Jamie Carragher whispered in Dudek's ear, "Remember Grobbelaar, do the legs." It was a reference to Liverpool's keeper from the 1984 final, who had distracted opponents with wobbly knees. Dudek took it to another level, throwing his arms, shaking his body, dancing on the line. Milan's legendary takers, Pirlo, Serginho, even Shevchenko crumbled under the pressure. One after another, they missed, dragged, or hesitated. By the time Shevchenko stepped up for Milan's last penalty, the pressure was unbearable. He struck straight at Dudek, who saved again. In an instant, Liverpool had done the impossible. Dudek sprinted away in disbelief, teammates piled on top of him, and the red end of the stadium exploded in tears, screams, and chaos. From forgotten keeper to eternal hero, this was the night Jerzy Dudek wrote his name into football history. For the players on the pitch, Istanbul was glory, but for some who were left behind, it became a source of pain that never really healed. Stephen Warnock, a young defender who had been part of Liverpool's journey to the final, was dropped from the squad at the last moment. Years later, he admitted that while he respected Benitez as a coach, the way it was handled left him bitter and disconnected from the club he loved. To this day, that night carries a sting, because he was close enough to touch history, yet never allowed to be part of it. And then there was Stefan Henschaz, once a key figure in Liverpool's defense. Instead of standing on the pitch under the lights of Istanbul, he sat alone in a hotel room, forced to watch his teammates create immortality without him. He later confessed it was the worst memory of his career. While the world celebrated the miracle, Henschaz's defining image of that night was a television screen. It's easy to forget that every legendary victory also leaves behind those who don't get to share in the triumph. For some, Istanbul was a resurrection. For others, it was the night their dreams were taken away. The night in Istanbul didn't end when Liverpool lifted the trophy. It was only the beginning of a legend that would outgrow the match itself. For Liverpool fans, it became the ultimate proof of identity, that no matter how dark things look, they will never walk alone. Every anniversary, fans around the world gather to relive it, watching highlight reels as if the outcome were still uncertain, their hearts racing even though they know exactly what happens next. For Steven Gerrard, that header in the 54th minute wasn't just a goal, it was the moment that transformed him from a great player into a symbol of defiance. Gerrard had carried Liverpool on his back many times, but Istanbul turned him into something greater, the captain who led the greatest comeback in Champions League history. Rafa Benitez, often described as cold and tactical, was suddenly immortalized for the substitutions and adjustments that flipped the script of a final no one thought could be saved. And Jerzy Dudek, once criticized and written off, became eternal. His spaghetti legs in the penalty shootout, his impossible saves against Shevchenko. Those images are replayed year after year, proof that sometimes heroes are made in a single night. But the legacy didn't belong only to Liverpool. For Milan, it was the wound that never truly healed. Here was a team packed with icons, Maldini, Cafu, Pirlo, Kaká, Crespo, Shevchenko, brought to their knees in the most public collapse the Champions League had ever seen. Even when Milan redeemed themselves in 2007 by beating Liverpool in Athens, the shadow of Istanbul was never far away. To this day, when people speak of that golden Milan generation, the miracle they lost in Istanbul is always part of the conversation. 2 decades later, the story still refuses to fade. Documentaries continue to revisit the drama, offering new details with every retelling. Dudek revealed that he had studied penalties meticulously, carrying notes on how each Milan star would strike the ball. Jamie Carragher admitted he begged Dudek to use Bruce Grobbelaar's infamous mind games from 1984. Luis Garcia recalled the moment Gerrard's header went in, saying it felt like the stadium itself began to breathe again. Even now, those who lived it describe it not as a football match, but as something closer to destiny. And it isn't just nostalgia. Coaches and players still point to Istanbul as the ultimate lesson: no game is ever truly over. Xabi Alonso, now a manager himself, compared a recent comeback to Istanbul, admitting that even as a coach he measures the impossible against that night. Because Istanbul isn't just in the past, it has become a reference point, a benchmark, a measuring stick. Every time a team falls behind by 2 or 3 goals, commentators whisper the same words. Remember Liverpool in 2005? It has become shorthand for the impossible, a reminder to fans and players alike that no game is ever truly lost. Even managers use it as motivation. Xabi Alonso, once the young midfielder who scored Liverpool's equalizer, is now a coach in Europe, and he has openly compared recent comebacks to Istanbul, saying that night taught him that belief can rewrite destiny. Other clubs have carried it as a banner too. Barcelona's remontada against PSG in 2017, Roma's shock over Barcelona in 2018, even Real Madrid's dramatic runs under Ancelotti. All of them, in one way or another, trace their inspiration back to that night in Turkey. For Liverpool supporters, Istanbul isn't just a story they tell, it's part of their DNA. It changed the way fans around the world saw the club. No longer just a historic team clinging to past glories, Liverpool became the team that refused to die, the club that embodied resilience against impossible odds. And for Milan, the ghost of Istanbul still lingers. Players like Shevchenko, Pirlo, and Maldini have spoken about it with a mix of respect and pain, because while it crowned Liverpool, it haunted Milan. That's what makes it unforgettable, the duality of triumph and tragedy, written into the same 120 minutes. Istanbul isn't just history, it's alive. Every comeback since then is judged against it. Every underdog, every believer, every fan who refuses to leave the stadium at 3-0 down carries a little piece of that night. It wasn't just a miracle, it was a lesson to the world. In football, as in life, it's never truly over until the final whistle blows. The Miracle of Istanbul will always be remembered as more than just a football match. It was the night hope defeated logic, when belief became stronger than despair, and when a team that was broken at halftime rose to immortality. For Liverpool, it became the heartbeat of their identity, proof that they could endure anything as long as they stood together. For Milan, it was the cruelest reminder that greatness can vanish in a blink. But beyond clubs, beyond trophies, Istanbul gave football its greatest lesson, that no matter how impossible the circumstances, the story is never finished until the very end. That's why 2 decades later, fans still talk about it, coaches still use it as inspiration, and players still dream of creating their own Istanbul. Because that night wasn't just about goals or tactics, it was about faith, resilience, and the refusal to surrender. And that's why, when the world remembers the 2005 Champions League final, it won't just be called a comeback. It will forever be remembered as the night Liverpool refused to die.